How do you build a better world? It's a huge question, right? But what if the answer isn't about some grand political strategy, but something much, much closer to home? In this explainer, we're going to look at a fascinating philosophy for creating a brighter future, and it puts all its bets on the youngest architects among us, our children.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with this quote because it really sets the stage. We're not talking about just a simple class or some after-school club here. The claim is that this approach, Balthakos, is the primary basis for a massive, global movement to bring back righteousness to the world. So, yeah, the stakes are pretty high.
So let's break that down. What does it actually mean to build this foundation for our tomorrow?
Well, the absolute key idea here is dharma. Now, this isn't just a list of rules. Think of it more as a way of living. It's about righteousness, your moral and ethical duties, and living in a way that keeps everything in balance. And that right there is the ultimate goal.
So, you might be wondering, if the goal is to fix the whole world, why put all the focus on kids? Let's get into the strategy behind that choice. And here's the core of it, and it's a really interesting way to look at things. The thinking is that trying to change adults, well, it's kind of like trying to bend a fully grown tree. They're often set in their ways, their habits are fixed. But children? They're like young saplings. They're receptive, they're open, you can guide them towards good ways of living, things like simplicity and humility, before the world hardens them.
But of course, guiding children down this path, well, it requires a very specific touch. You can't just use the old-school methods of discipline.
I love this metaphor. It's so clear, isn't it? The stick here is all about fear, punishment, and just being rigid. And the point is, you can't force a child to be good. That kind of approach just pushes them away. It doesn't build any real connection.
And here's the other side of it. The sweets aren't literally candy, you know? They stand for love, for positivity, for encouragement. It's saying that the only real way into a child's heart, into their mind, is through genuine kindness, not by forcing them.
So this puts a huge amount of responsibility on the teacher, the guru. This is not just a job, it's a calling, because the teacher is the lesson. You can't just stand up there and talk about love and patience. You have to be a living, breathing example of it. You've got to lead by who you are, not just by what you say.
And what's really interesting is that this philosophy goes way beyond just the individual teacher. It's about creating an entire environment for growth.
Now think about that for a second. That is such a radical idea in education. Most schools are obsessed with the syllabus, right? The what. But this philosophy says the atmosphere is way more important. The specific subjects you teach are secondary. The real job is to create a space, a culture, where good habits and ideals can just naturally grow and blossom, kind of like plants in a really well-cared-for garden.
And, they acknowledge a real-world challenge here. Since these classes often only happen once a week, the impact has to be incredibly strong. It can't just be a nice, pleasant hour. It's got to be powerful enough to stick with that child all week long, to actually be a catalyst for real change in their life.
So, if it's not about memorizing facts, and it's not about passing tests, what is the end game? What does success actually look like here?
And there it is. The ultimate goal is so simple, but at the same time, it's incredibly ambitious. It's to raise an entire generation of kids who have a clean and clear conscience. It's all about building character from the inside out, so that doing the right thing just becomes who they are.
So what does a clean and clear conscience actually look like in day-to-day life? Well, it looks like this. It breaks down into these very real, very human virtues. An education that really matters doesn't just train a kid to think, it trains them to love. Not just to compete, but to cooperate. To have the courage to stand up for what's true, to be helpful, to feel for others, and to be grateful. These are the real building blocks for that better tomorrow.
And all of this leaves us with one final question to think about. This philosophy presents a really clear vision for shaping the future by nurturing our kids. It asks us to think of these virtues as seeds. So the question for all of us is, in our own lives, in our families, our schools, our communities, what seeds are we planting right now for the world that's going to grow from them?